You think you know death? Modern humans burying bodies with flowers, grave goods, ritual? But 60,000 years ago, in caves across Europe and Western Asia, another human species was already wrestling with mortality. Neanderthals, the stocky Ice Age survivors we dismissed as brutes. They were laying their dead to rest with care that would make you question everything you thought you knew about human consciousness. Who were they really? What did they understand about death that we're only now discovering? And why does their relationship with the afterlife challenge the very definition of what makes us human? The Neanderthals controlled the European continent for 300,000 years, from the Iberian Peninsula to the Altai Mountains. They adapted to ice ages that would kill modern cities. They hunted mammoth and woolly rhino with wooden spears. They made tools, controlled fire, and lived in family groups. But the most shocking discovery sits in their graves. Deliberate burial, ritual behavior. Evidence of grief that spans 50 millennia. If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from archaeological excavations and paleoanthropological studies. Now back to the story. 1957. Shanidar Cave, northern Iraq. Ralph Selecki's team uncovers Shanidar 4, a Neanderthal skeleton lying on his left side, knees drawn up. Nothing unusual until the soil samples hit the lab. Pollen clusters, specific flowers, yarrow, cornflower, hollyhock. Someone had placed these plants around the body 60,000 years ago, the world's first funeral bouquet. But here's what makes your skin crawl. Yarrow is medicinal. These weren't random flowers. They were chosen. The skeleton tells a harder story. Shanidar 4 died around age 30, old for a Neanderthal. His right arm was withered from birth, useless. In the brutal Ice Age, disability meant death. But this man lived 3 decades. Someone fed him, protected him, cared for him when he could contribute nothing to survival. Then, when he died, they laid him down with healing plants and covered him with stones. But Shanidar 4 wasn't alone in that cave. 9 Neanderthal skeletons total. Shanidar 1 lived to be between 40 and 50 years old. Massive for his time. But he was blind in his left eye. His right arm had been amputated above the elbow. Severe head trauma had damaged his brain. This man should have died at 20. Instead, his family kept him alive for decades, fed him, guided him, mourned him when he finally fell. The pattern repeats across Europe. Chapelle-aux-Saints, France. 1908, 3 French priests digging in a limestone cave find a complete Neanderthal skeleton. The old man of La Chapelle, aged between 40 and 60, arthritis in his spine, missing most of his teeth, gum disease so severe he couldn't chew meat. Someone had been feeding him soft food for years, pre-chewing his meals, keeping him alive when nature said die. The burial itself breaks every assumption about Neanderthal intelligence. The body lies in a rectangular pit, carefully carved, too regular to be natural erosion. Tools scattered around the edges suggest the grave was dug with purpose. Stone scrapers, a hand axe. But here's the detail that changes everything. The skeleton's position. Arms folded across the chest, legs slightly bent, head tilted east toward the sunrise. Someone arranged this body with intention. 1975. Kafse Cave, Israel. Archaeologists find something that shouldn't exist. A Neanderthal child buried with a deer antler across its chest. The antler was carved, shaped, polished smooth by human hands. This wasn't random placement. Someone crafted a grave gift for a child who would never grow up. The emotional weight hits when you realize the crafting time, hours of careful work to honor a dead infant. But the real revelation comes from the soil. Microscopic analysis shows the burial happened in a single event, no gradual covering by natural processes. The family dug the pit, placed the child, arranged the antler, and filled the grave in one day. They stood around that hole and said goodbye with ceremony we're still trying to understand. The evidence multiplies. Dederia Cave, Syria. A Neanderthal infant buried with a stone slab over its chest. Untold Cave. Israel. An adult male interred with a wild boar jaw beside his head. Roc de Marsalle, France. A 3-year-old child placed in a natural depression and covered with sediment. Each burial shows planning, preparation, grief transformed into ritual. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. These weren't isolated incidents. 44 confirmed Neanderthal burial sites across 10 countries, Spain to Uzbekistan, spanning 200,000 years. The pattern is so consistent, it suggests cultural transmission. Knowledge passed down through generations. Death practices that endured longer than recorded human history. The tools tell their own story. Mousterian scrapers found exclusively in burial contexts, cleaned, sharpened, placed with purpose. These weren't everyday tools tossed in graves. They were prepared for the journey. Some show no wear marks, brand new blades crafted specifically for burial. The time investment suggests these communities valued their dead enough to sacrifice productive labor. Teshiktash, Uzbekistan, 1938. Soviet archaeologists discover an 8-year-old Neanderthal child surrounded by mountain goat skulls. 5 pairs of horns arranged in a circle around the small skeleton. The horns were positioned points outward. Protective formation. Someone spent hours collecting these skulls, arranging them with geometric precision, creating a fortress of bone around a child who would never need protection again. The forensic details cut deeper. The child died from malnutrition. Growth plates show prolonged starvation, but the community didn't abandon the body. They honored it, fed it symbolically with the horns of the animals they couldn't catch. The ritual suggests they understood death as transition, not termination. Monte Sorceo, Italy. 1939, a Neanderthal skull discovered in a cave chamber. The skull sits alone on a bed of stones. The foramen magnum, the hole where the spine enters, has been deliberately enlarged. Someone removed the brain, not through violence, through careful post-mortem extraction. The skull shows no trauma. This was preparation, processing, sacred handling of the most important organ. But here's what makes your blood run cold. The skull faces east, same direction as La Chapelle, same orientation found at 23 other Neanderthal burial sites. They had a consistent belief about which way the dead should face. A shared understanding of proper placement that crossed thousands of miles and tens of thousands of years. The archaeology gets more precise. Kibera Cave, Israel. A complete Neanderthal torso buried in a shallow pit. The leg bones are missing, not scattered by scavengers. Deliberately removed. Cut marks on the pelvis show careful dismemberment. Someone took those bones for a purpose. Trophy collecting, ritual preservation, secondary burial practice where bones were moved to sacred locations. The timing matters. Carbon dating places the burial at 60,000 years ago. But the cut marks are fresh. Made perimortem, around the time of death. This wasn't grave robbing centuries later. This was immediate post-mortem processing. The family standing around a fresh corpse making decisions about which parts to keep and which parts to bury. Krapina, Croatia. 1899, the most disturbing Neanderthal site ever found. 800 bone fragments from at least 24 individuals. Adults, children, infants, all showing cut marks, all processed. The bones were cracked open for marrow, skulls smashed for brain access. But here's the twist. Some bones show healing marks. These people lived together, cared for each other, then ate each other when they died. Cannibalism? Maybe. But not the savage kind we imagine. The cut marks are precise, professional. Someone with anatomical knowledge systematically processing bodies. The skull fragments show no violence trauma. These people didn't die from murder. They died natural deaths, then became food for the living. Survival cannibalism in an ice age that killed everything. But even cannibalism had rules. The long bones were cracked systematically. Always the same technique, always the same locations. Knowledge passed down through families. How to honor the dead by consuming them completely. Waste nothing. Let death feed life. El Sidron, Spain, 2006. 12. Neanderthal skeletons in a cave chamber. All died around the same time. All show cut marks. But genetic analysis reveals they were family. Same mitochondrial DNA. Parents, children, siblings. This wasn't warfare cannibalism. This was domestic. Family eating family during a crisis we can't imagine. The details multiply. Moula-Guerci, France. Neanderthal bones mixed with deer and rabbit remains. Same butchering techniques on human and animal bones. Same marrow extraction methods. Same disposal patterns. In times of starvation, Neanderthals made no distinction between human meat and game meat. Protein was protein. Survival was survival. But the strangest sights suggest something deeper than hunger. Brunico Cave, France, 2016. Stone circles 440 meters inside the cave. Pure darkness. No daylight penetration. The circles are made from broken stalagmites, 176 pieces arranged in precise geometric patterns. Some pieces show fire damage. Someone lit torches in the absolute darkness and built stone monuments no one would ever see. Carbon dating destroys assumptions. The circles are 176,000 years old, before Homo sapiens left Africa, before modern human consciousness supposedly evolved. Neanderthals crawled into the deepest darkness and created sacred space with geometric precision that required planning, cooperation, and symbolic thinking. The implications? Chill. These weren't burial sites. No bones found. No tools. Just stone circles in the void. Ritual space for purposes we can't grasp. Neanderthals understanding darkness is sacred. death is mystery, ceremony is necessity, even when no one was watching. Gibraltar, Gorham's Cave, 2014, carved rock surface deep in the chamber, hash mark patterns scratched into stone. Deliberate geometric designs that took hours to create. The marks are covered by archaeological layers dating to 39,000 years ago. The last Neanderthals in Europe left their mark before extinction, final testimony carved in stone, but the most haunting discovery sits in Belgium. Spy Cave, 1886. 2 complete Neanderthal skeletons found with their skulls resting on their arms, sleeping position. Someone arranged these bodies to look peaceful, comfortable, ready for a rest that would never end. The forensics reveal more. Both skeletons show healed fractures, broken ribs that mended, fractured legs that grew back crooked but functional. These people survived injuries that should have killed them. Someone set their bones, fed them during recovery, nursed them back to health in a world where weakness meant death. Modern science adds layers. DNA analysis shows Neanderthals and early humans interbred. 4% of non-African DNA comes from Neanderthal ancestors. Their grief genes live in our blood. Their death rituals shaped our mourning instincts. We carry their sorrow in our chromosomes, but the dating becomes critical. The last confirmed Neanderthal burial sites date to 28,000 years ago. Spain, Portugal, Gibraltar, the final holdouts as ice sheets crushed Europe. Even facing extinction, they buried their dead with ceremony, maintained rituals when everything else collapsed, honored death until the very end. The tools found in final sites show desperation, broken spear points repaired multiple times, stone blades worn down to slivers. Bone needles cracked from overuse. But graves still contained new offerings, fresh flowers, carved ornaments, time taken from survival to honor the departed, choice to face extinction with dignity rather than abandon their dead. Here's what breaks your assumptions completely. Abric Romani, Spain, 2021, Neanderthal hearth sites with evidence of controlled fire dating to 70,000 years ago. But the ash patterns show something unprecedented. Fires built in geometric arrangements, circular patterns, star shapes. Fire as art. Fire as ritual. Fire as communication with forces we don't understand. The hearths contain burned animal bones, not random disposal, specific species, bear skulls, wolf teeth, eagle talons. Predator remains burned together in ceremonial fire. Someone understood power animals, spiritual significance. Transformation through flame. Concepts we thought required modern consciousness. Pete de la Baume, France. 1998, Neanderthal cave with evidence of red ochre use dating to 64,000 years ago. Hand stencils on cave walls, handprints in red pigment. But these aren't random marks. The handprints cluster around natural cave formations that look like animals. Bears, horses, mammoths. Someone saw shapes in stone and marked them with human presence. The pigment analysis stuns. Red ochre mixed with ground bone. Human bone. Someone ground up their ancestors and mixed them with paint to mark sacred walls. Death pigment. Ancestor paint. The boundary between living and dead dissolved in red handprints that still mark cave walls today. But the most chilling revelation comes from recent excavations. Cueva de los Aviones, Spain, 2018. Perforated shells dating to 115,000 years ago. Jewelry, personal ornaments. But the shells show wear patterns consistent with burial context. Someone wore these in life, then took them to the grave. Personal identity preserved beyond death. The wear patterns reveal daily use, scratches from clothing, polish from skin contact. These shells lived with their owners for years, became part of identity, part of self-expression in a world we imagine as brutal and gray. Beauty mattered. Personal style mattered. Even to people we dismissed as primitive. Mount Carmel, Israel, Taboon Cave, 2019. Female Neanderthal skeleton with evidence of deliberate tooth modification. Front teeth filed into points. Decorative scarification on the skull. Body modification for aesthetic purposes. Someone cared enough about appearance to endure pain for beauty. Vanity surviving in the Ice Age. But here's where modern science reveals the deepest truth. Bone chemistry analysis from burial sites across Europe shows consistent dietary patterns in the months before death. Increased plant consumption, reduced meat intake. Someone was feeding dying Neanderthals soft vegetable matter, caring for them as they weakened, easing their final days with gentle nutrition. The isotope ratios tell stories of tenderness. Elderly Neanderthals eating roots and berries while healthy adults consumed meat. Food sharing that prioritized the weak. Survival economics turned upside down by compassion. Love defeating natural selection in the coldest epoch Earth has known. Recent excavations at Vindiga Cave, Croatia, uncovered something that changes everything we thought we knew. 2023. Neanderthal remains showing evidence of cranial surgery. Holes drilled in skulls with stone tools, but the bone shows healing. These people survived brain surgery performed with Paleolithic technology. Someone understood anatomy well enough to open heads and keep patients alive. The drill holes are too precise for accident, too clean for violence. Someone identified pressure points, located safe entry spots, performed trepanation with skill that required anatomical knowledge passed down through generations. Medical knowledge, surgical tradition, healing arts in the hands of people we labeled as brutish. Fontechevade, France, 1947. A Neanderthal skull with multiple healed fractures, blunt force trauma to the frontal bone, massive impact that cracked the skull in 3 places, but the healing patterns show months of recovery. Someone treated this head injury with enough skill to prevent infection. Brain swelling controlled, intracranial pressure managed, neurosurgery without modern tools. The bone growth patterns reveal nursing techniques, elevated sleeping positions to reduce pressure, liquid feeding to prevent aspiration, physical therapy to maintain muscle function during recovery. Knowledge that required understanding brain anatomy, circulation patterns, and healing physiology. Medical expertise that shouldn't exist in the Paleolithic. Guattari Cave, Italy, 1939. The Monte Circeo skull reveals more than enlarged foramen magnum. Tool marks around the eye sockets, precise cuts suggesting deliberate removal of soft tissue. But these aren't butchering marks. Too careful, too systematic. Someone was preserving this skull for long-term display, cleaning it, preparing it for ceremony. Chemical analysis of bone residue shows traces of plant compounds, preservation agents, natural antibiotics, pine resin, birch bark extract, oak gall tannins. Someone understood decomposition chemistry well enough to mummify remains, stop decay, preserve identity beyond death. The skull sat in that cave for 60,000 years because Neanderthal knowledge kept it intact. Pontywood Cave, Wales, 1978. 17 Neanderthal teeth with deliberate modification, filed edges, shaped points, decorative notching. But the wear patterns show these modifications happened years before death. Someone lived with filed teeth for decades, endured the pain of dental surgery for aesthetic reasons, beauty standards enforced through suffering. The filing techniques vary by age group. Children show simple notches. Adults display complex geometric patterns. Elder teeth reveal master-level craftsmanship. This was learned behavior, skill developing over lifetimes, artistic traditions passed from generation to generation, dental modification as cultural identity marker, Sacco Pastore, Italy, 1929. 2 Neanderthal skulls with matching cranial deformations, artificial shaping, heads bound in infancy to create elongated profiles, but both skulls show identical modification patterns. Same binding technique, same pressure points, same final shape. Cultural practice shared between families, beauty standards enforced from birth. The binding marks suggest flexible materials, leather strips, plant fibers, cloth-like textiles. Someone invented head-shaping technology using organic materials that left no trace except bone deformation. Engineering infant development for aesthetic goals. Vanity defeating natural selection in the most brutal epoch human ancestors survived. Petit Puy Moyen, France, 2011. Neanderthal finger bone with evidence of amputation, clean cut through the middle phalanx. But the bone shows healing. Someone removed half this finger with stone tools and kept the patient alive. Surgical amputation, anesthesia using plant compounds, post-operative care that prevented infection. The cut surface reveals tool marks consistent with obsidian blades, sharpest cutting implements known to Paleolithic peoples. Someone understood that clean cuts heal better than jagged wounds. Surgical knowledge that required anatomical training. Medical expertise hidden in a single finger bone from 80,000 years ago. La Ferracie, France, 1968. 7 Neanderthal skeletons in a single cave chamber, all showing evidence of ritual scarification, deliberate cuts in skull bone, geometric patterns carved into living tissue. But these marks healed. Someone survived decorative surgery performed with stone knives. Endured scarification for cultural reasons? We can't understand. The scarification patterns match across age groups. Similar designs, similar placement, similar healing responses, cultural marking that identified group membership. Ritual scarring that required medical knowledge to prevent fatal infection. Pain endured for social belonging. Identity marked in flesh and bone. Combe Capelle, France, 1868. Neanderthal skeleton with evidence of prosthetic limb use. Bone wear patterns on the left. Ulna suggest long-term contact with artificial support. Someone lost their hand and lived for years using a wooden or bone replacement. Prosthetic technology that required engineering knowledge. Adaptive solutions for disability that kept people productive. The wear patterns showed decades of use: smooth polish from repeated contact, groove formations from rope or leather binding. Someone crafted a functional hand replacement and refined it over years of daily use. Assistive technology that let disabled individuals contribute to group survival. Compassion translated into engineering innovation. Hortus Cave, France, 1962. Neanderthal remains with evidence of systematic dental care. Stone tools modified for oral surgery. Pointed implements for tooth extraction. Scraping tools for plaque removal. Dental hygiene practiced with Paleolithic instruments. Oral health maintenance that required anatomical knowledge. The tool wear patterns show repeated use on hard materials. Enamel polish. Calculus residue. Someone understood tooth decay as treatable condition. Pain as manageable problem. Dental disease as preventable outcome. Medical knowledge focused on quality of life. Healthcare that improved daily existence in the Ice Age. R.C. Secure, France, 1961. Neanderthal burial with unprecedented grave goods. 43 stone tools. 15 bone implements. 7 ivory ornaments. But the arrangement suggests specific meaning. Tools placed according to function, weapons near the hands, scrapers by the feet, ornaments around the neck. Someone organized this burial with symbolic logic. The ivory pieces show microscopic wear patterns. Daily use scratches, handling polish. These weren't created for burial. They were personal possessions worn in life, identity markers taken to the grave. Someone believed personal objects maintained connection between living and dead. Material culture as spiritual bridge. Rigordu, France, 1957. Neanderthal skeleton associated with cave bear remains, but not random association. 17 complete bear skulls arranged in specific patterns around the human burial, bear bones placed according to anatomical position. Someone reconstructed entire bear skeletons as grave goods, animals as spirit guides for the afterlife journey. The bear skulls show processing marks, deliberate defleshing, careful cleaning, preservation techniques that maintained structural integrity. Someone understood decay processes well enough to create permanent grave goods from organic materials, taxidermy techniques that preserved form and meaning for burial ceremony. Cova Negra, Spain, 1955. Neanderthal site with evidence of ritual feasting associated with burial practice. Massive bone accumulations showing butchering marks concentrated around human remains, but the animal bones show selection patterns. Only specific cuts, only premium meat. Feast food prepared for a funeral ceremony. The butchering patterns match modern funeral feast traditions, specific cuts for specific occasions, ritual food preparation that honored the deceased while feeding the living, community bonding through shared meals associated with death and mourning, social cohesion strengthened by collective grief and celebration. Banyoles, Spain, 1982. Neanderthal mandible with evidence of ritualized tooth extraction, missing molars removed perimortem, around time of death, but the extraction technique shows surgical precision. Clean removal, no fracturing, no infection. Someone pulled teeth as death ceremony, final preparation for afterlife journey. The tooth sockets show healing attempts, bodies trying to recover even as death approached. But the extractions continued. Systematic removal of specific teeth according to unknown cultural logic, death rituals that required medical skill even in final moments, ceremony that honored dying while managing pain. But the final revelation comes from genetic analysis of burial site remains, 2024. DNA extracted from Neanderthal bones shows evidence of inherited grief responses, genetic markers associated with prolonged mourning, natural selection for extended sorrow, evolution favoring those who grieved longest and hardest. The implications stagger: grief as survival advantage, mourning as community bonding, sorrow as social glue that held groups together through ice ages that killed everything else, natural selection breeding deeper capacity for loss, evolution creating beings whose love for the dead made them stronger than the living. Isotope analysis reveals seasonal burial patterns. Most Neanderthal interments occurred during winter months, death season, when cold made survival hardest and community bonds most critical. Someone understood that ritual helped groups survive the darkest times. Ceremony as psychological medicine, burial as collective therapy that healed the living. The carbon dating shows consistency across continents, similar burial practices from Spain to Siberia, shared traditions that crossed mountain ranges and survived ice ages, cultural transmission that required teaching, learning, memory, knowledge passed from parent to child for hundreds of thousands of years, longest continuous funeral tradition in human history. In 2023, ground-penetrating radar at Cueva de Ardales revealed a mass burial chamber sealed for 40,000 years. 23 Neanderthal skeletons arranged in concentric circles around a central hearth, all facing inward, all with arms reaching toward the fire. Someone positioned these bodies to share warmth forever, the final ceremony of a people who understood death as journey, not destination, cold, darkness, memory.